Hello and welcome to the Preplanner feature spotlight. So this feature is quite complex, but it is super helpful and I use it all the time in progression scenarios because the way the tool usually works is that it plans until the end of your log, but when you haven't killed the boss yet, you're going in blind for the next part of progression. So the pre-planner is going to help you with that and try to bridge the gap. You just check this box and it's going to plan ahead for 5 more minutes after the log ends. So if you have a 3 minute log, it's going to plan until 8 minutes, which should be enough because you usually don't get 5 minutes deeper into the fight on the next pull. Um, so like I said, the configuration looks quite complex. This is the default configuration currently. And the way this works is that it tries to predict when each spec is going to pop their big CDs. And what you can configure here is for each spec, how long their cooldown is expected to be, how long their cooldown is expected to be running, so the duration, their priority. I'm going to get into burst coverage threshold in a minute, but it's quite complex, so let's talk about priority first. So assuming everyone has their cooldowns up, it will prioritize like this, with lower numbers being higher priority. So in this case, if we had an unholy DK and they would have cooldowns up, and a sub-rogue would also have cooldowns up, then it would prioritize the unholy DK over the sub-rogue. Now, what does the burst coverage threshold tell you, or what can you configure here? So the planner needs some way to determine whether a cooldown is running or not. For example, the Unholy DK has cooldowns running for like 30 seconds, and it might not completely overlap with your buff window. So this burst coverage threshold is a percentage value, or 0.7, 70%, and it's going to tell the tool that if at least 70% of the Unholy DK's burst window overlaps with your buff window, then it's going to count that cooldown as running. But if it's only like 3 seconds left on the Unholy DK's burst, and you're starting a new buff window for 30 seconds, it probably doesn't make too much sense to buff them. So yeah, you can really play around with this a lot and try out different configurations. Um, try and find out whatever suits your needs best. Yeah, like I said, the default is 0.7 for every spec. And then there's also the specs with zero cooldown. Obviously, they don't actually have zero cooldown, but if you enter a cooldown of zero here, it's going to treat that spec as a constant damage spec or as a fallback. So assuming nobody else has cooldowns running, it will always fall back to one of these specs and again go by priority. So yeah, I guess that covers it basically. Oh, one more thing I forgot about, or almost forgot about. You can also configure your own cooldown usage. For example, let's say you're playing Scale Commander, then you would rather have a 90-second cooldown on Breath of Eons rather than 120 seconds, and you can configure that here. Also, what you can do, if you have expected delays in cooldowns or downtimes, you can use the downtimes together with a pre-planner, and then the tool will also delay the cooldowns of every player in your raid until that downtime ends. So they won't be using it if a downtime is coming up. As always, if you need a refresher, check these notes that I left for you here. And yeah, thank you for watching. See you next time.